I want to start off with some context and say that I'm a big nature guy. By that, I mean I'm a little bit of a nerd in that regard. I've always had a keen interest in plants, and especially insects. I love insects. I have a pretty big fenced-off garden on my land, which I like to cultivate and plant as many different types of plants as I possibly can. I have various terrariums I've made for myself, which have bugs living inside that I have personally caught myself by hand. I do this a lot actually, it's pretty fun for me. I can't always get all of the plants I want to see in my state, and it is actually illegal to ship over some plants and bugs and stuff, so what I really like to do is go to places I have never been before and take pictures of new plants and document them either in a scrapbook with pictures or by taking a sample myself. If the plant isn't alive/can't be planted, then they don't even really check it, and it gets through customs. Whether that's technically legal or illegal or not, I'm not really sure, but I have not been stopped by TSA yet, Lamau. I like to capture bugs I have not seen before and take pictures, or just have them living in my garden. I am particularly interested in small little insects. I love things like ladybugs or stick insects, literally just anything cool looking. I know it will sound really odd to a lot of you, but it's my hobby. I didn't choose it, it kinda just chose me. I've even made a little bit of money over the years writing guidebooks using my knowledge and writing articles online instructing people how to make their own terrariums, how to take care of and make their gardens look nice, etc. It's like a side hustle, except I don't really rely on it to be financially stable, and it's something that I actually love doing. Sorry, I know that was a lot of yapping for something so simple. I just wanted to make it clear. So, this one day I was traveling to a nearby state. I probably should not mention by name where I was going, since it gives you a general location and could dox me, but I will tell you that I was traveling to New England. You would not believe the unique amount of insects in different US states. There were insects I would never even dream of seeing where I live. There were a couple on my checklist to look for, but one that I had a keen interest in was the 9-spotted ladybird beetle. There is a lot of talk that they have been completely uprooted from the area, but then I saw some talk on some forums I frequent that someone had spotted one quite recently too. They are exceptionally rare, and I would have traveled the world over to see one with my own 2 eyes. I had a friend making the journey with me who hates nature to say the least. He hates being outdoors. He is deathly afraid of things like spiders and just generally prefers to either go to the local bar or just stay home. Well, I don't know if friend is the right word. He was more of a work colleague than a friend, but he owed me a huge favor and agreed to drive me there and stick around to drive me back home. I won't really go into the details of how it happened, but he ended up rear-ending my car, and it was going to cost a bomb while it was in the shop. He seemed pretty apologetic, and I respected him for agreeing to drive me. I told him that he did not have to camp out with me. He could just stay somewhere nearby, and I would call him up once I was done. He said he'd like to give exploring some nature a try, since otherwise he would just end up really bored, and so we made the journey. The drive, I have to say, was pretty uneventful. We drove in the early morning so that we had maximum daylight time to look around. I brought some various equipment for catching small bugs without hurting them, for taking pictures, and for safely removing clippings of plants without causing too much harm to the surrounding plants. I won't really go into detail on the gear, as I imagine that none of you will know or even really care. Let me skip along quite a bit, because nothing happens for a long while. I will say that we were in some very deep woods. I did not even have a tent. The plan was just to lay underneath some tree shade with a sleeping bag. It can be kind of dangerous to camp under the sky like that, but I was pretty seasoned by now. My friend, who I will call David, he was pretty annoyed with me. He just moaned and complained and pissed his pants the entire time. He kept complaining about how much his feet hurt, how he was really hungry. He kept asking if we could just drive back early. We hadn't even been at it for even an hour. It was actually driving me up the wall. He could have easily just stayed in a hotel nearby or something like that. Hell, he didn't even have to drive me at all. I tried to just block out his whining as white noise. I had already been noticing some strange things throughout the day. I did not call David's attention to them because, well, it would have been just another excuse for him to whine. But I will say that the entire place was quiet, much too quiet. We were in deep, deep woods. There was no one around for miles, no houses, no roads, no nothing. I did not hear so much as a bird chirping while we were walking around, which is strange. There should have been insects buzzing, birds chirping, something at least. But at some point, I did hear some buzzing that sounded like it was coming from off in the distance. David very reluctantly followed me as I went on ahead. I don't even know how to describe what I saw without seeming like I was exaggerating. But there was just a mound of different bugs all in a pile, just buzzing and freaking out on top of each other. Bugs that usually would never get near each other, that would be frightened of each other. Bugs that would usually eat one another. They were just buzzing and shaking and almost like they were all having a seizure on top of each other. Like, by the base of a tree, there was a pile of what must have been 10 or 20 different bugs all buzzing next to each other and like flying in a circle. There was a couple of bees, some flies, and some other bugs too that I cannot remember. And it was not just the one pile. I found multiple mounds of bugs like this, only most of them were dead. They did not look like they had any damage or were attacked by anything. They looked as if they had just dropped out of the sky and died instantly or something. It was so strange. David really pissed me off actually. He was acting like a moron, making fun of me, saying who cares that bugs are dead, they're just bugs. He went to step on a pile of them actually, telling me he was putting them out of their misery, and I just went off on him. I started asking him why he even bothered to come along if he was just going to be cruel and evil, that he did not even bother to give it a chance like he said he would do, and I told him that he should have just fucked off and stayed in the car. This sent him into a rage. He is that kind of guy, prone to bursts of anger. He never ever uses his head when he gets angry like this. It's how he messed up my car and ended up here with me in the first place. Truth be told, I could have easily pressed charges and had the police involved, but I felt really bad, and I guess he took advantage of that. We had a bit of a shouting match, and I guess out of spite from me, this fucker went up to a tree and open palm slapped it and then just laughed at me. He told me to go and cry and hold a funeral for the stupid fucking bug, is what he said. And then he walked off into a random direction, deeper into the woods. I was furious when I saw what he had done. He crushed a ladybug. It wasn't the one I was after, but it was evil all the same. I had half a mind to chase him down, but I just left it at that. Screw him. I went in a completely different direction instead. It wasn't the last weird thing I experienced either. Even though we had heard no animals all day, I started hearing cries every so often. They sounded like the cries of a wild dog or something. This happened as it was starting to get quite dark. I had a flashlight with me, but I know that David did not. Even though I was still absolutely furious with him, I was a little worried for him. These dog cries got more and more drawn out, until at one point, I heard one of them turn from a cry to more of a whine. It sounded like it was hurt, pretty badly too. By what, I have no idea. I walked deeper into the woods for a while. I had turned my flashlight on at this point. I was just scanning left to right, but I knew full well I was not going to have any luck that day. I was really unhappy. I go as far as to say miserable. I backed up and went and sat by a tree. I just plopped myself on the ground and laid my head back, which is when I felt something really cold on my neck, and I almost shouted out loud, really loudly. I jumped up to my feet and flicked the flashlight around. I genuinely could not believe what I was seeing. The tree, it was a massive, thick one. I think it was one of those pincho sycamore ones, the ones that are really thick, with the branches that go up and swirl in weird patterns. The tree had a massive, gaping hole inside of it. This tree was thick enough that it was wider than like 4 or 5 people stood side by side, and this hole was a little higher up than my head, but was more than big enough for multiple people to fit inside. But the thing that was wet, there was something leaking out from the tree. It looked thick and wet. It must have been some kind of tree sap is the only guess I could make, the only explanation that really made sense in my head. But it was this really strange color. It was partially red, which really freaked me out. It made me think that someone had been murdered and stuffed inside the tree, but I knew it wasn't that. I touched the back of my neck and I saw the red on my fingers, but it did not smell like blood at all. It was this really muddy red that was not really that far away from brown, but it was thick and it smelled like sweat and piss if I had to give it a name. It was really musky. Like a really hairy man sweating his balls off. It was a peculiar sight that I had never seen before in nature, and like I said, I'd been to a lot of places all around the world. Looking at trees and nature of all kinds, I had never seen this phenomenon. It looked like the tree was just leaking blood. There were a few trees around the area that I had seen that had similar sized punctures, but this was the only one I had seen that was leaking. I walked around a little bit more. I could feel my heartbeat really going by now. I started to hear more noises in the woods. I heard a lot of twigs snapping and leaves rustling, but it could have easily just been David screwing around. I was trying to find him now, since I was a little bit creeped out. I could have sworn I heard a lot of snapping coming from above me though, like maybe there was something crawling up near the trees. Around 5 minutes later I hear a scream. It wasn't a dog this time. It sounded like a human. It sounded almost like a man who had just seen the devil himself. My only thought was that it must have been David, that maybe he saw a massive spider, or that maybe he had run into one of those wild dogs I had heard earlier. I tried my best to creep through the woods without making too many sounds. I was going to head in his direction and scare this fucker as revenge for being an asshole. Bear in mind, I was not carrying a gun. It might seem stupid to you, but I've never needed one. I've always felt safe in the woods. I don't want to hurt any wildlife if I don't have to. I think guns are much too destructive, and I have plenty of sharp and long weapons I can use to make sure that things keep their distance. Most wild dogs will run away at the sound of a flare or a small firework. I think David was carrying though. What he was carrying, I have no idea. I always had nightmares of that guy shooting up my workplace. I suppose that's a little bit off topic though. When I heard a gunshot, I started running really quickly. Then I heard that scream again. It must have been David screaming. I heard him shouting, "Get away!" So he must have missed whatever it was. I'd only ever heard him sound that frightened when he had seen a spider. I managed to get close-ish while in some tall brush and foliage. I had my flashlight turned off because I did not want to draw the attention of any wild dogs nearby. When I got close enough to see what was actually happening, when I got close enough to see David's face, I nearly shit my pants and ran away right then and there. He was staring up at a tree, one of those big thick ones like I told you about that had the big hole inside of it. There was still just enough light, and my eyes had adjusted enough to see without my flashlight on. Plus, David had the flashlight on his cell phone turned on, so that was helping too. This tree was leaking too, the same color as before. Only, there was something up there, on the tree, clinging to the tree. I don't even know how to describe this thing. I only really got glimpses of it, because there was not a lot of light, and David could not even keep the flashlight steady. He was panicking and flinging it back and forth, which kind of fucked my eyes up and made me a little bit dizzy, and I also had to focus really hard so that I did not scream or make any loud noises. But it was this massive thing, like a massive insect. I'm talking really, really massive, bigger than a damn dog. Probably as big as David, but I can't fully remember. This thing had like 6 legs, but the front 2 were more like, I don't know, like big claws. It has them stuck into the tree and was using them to just cling to it. It was a greenish color from what I could tell, maybe with hints of red or brown, but that could have been from the tree. Its head was shaped like a praying mantis. That is the only way I can describe the thing. This diamond-shaped head with 2 bulging black eyes. Its arms were long but curled up at the front, and they had something sharp all along them. They looked to be glinting slightly. Its torso was so long, it was insane. I had never seen something like this before in my life. It was just staring at David, who raised his gun back up and started to take shots at this thing. I saw one hit the thing. I think it hit it in the body, but it didn't make any kind of pain noise, so maybe it missed. It moved so quickly. I watched it scuttle down the tray quicker than I could even see in the low light. The whole time it moved, I could hear this noise that sounded like 2 bits of rough paper being scraped back and forth against one another, only a little bit lower and maybe sped up. David did not even get a chance to shoot another round at this thing. By the time he was going to fire again, the thing had leapt off the tray and was right up against him. And it shot its arm out faster than I could even see. It looked more like a blur. And all of a sudden this thing's arm, hand, claw, whatever it was, had shot right through David's arm, and he had dropped the gun. He was screaming so loudly, but it was cut short. All I saw was another blur, and all of a sudden, the other arm of this thing had now gone through David's stomach and all of the way through to the other side. All I could do was just hold my own mouth. I didn't have anything big enough on hand to even help. If a gun couldn't even put this thing down, then it would have been suicide for me. You have to believe me. David's eyes were just so wide at this point. When this thing was leaping, he was trying to use his phone flashlight to guide his vision and see the thing, to try and get a better shot, I think. But he couldn't track it fully, so it was even harder to see what was going on. But the light from that was the only reason I could see so much at this point, even if it wasn't focused directly on the thing. It was enough. This thing removed its arms, and I saw David just fall back onto his back. I think he was still conscious, but was spitting out blood, and I could see him struggling to even breathe. This thing had these massive mandible-type things on its face, near its mouth, and I saw it bite David's neck, just one quick, big bite. And when it did, David was not even attempting to breathe anymore. It didn't tear off any flesh. There was just a wound in David's neck, and that was it. There was just blood gushing from it. I had to hold my face with both of my hands to stop myself from crying. This whole next bit is just a blur. I don't even really know what I saw, but I will do my best to describe it. The bite was just as fast as its other movements, and it moved its arm really quickly again, into the wound that was already on David's stomach. It was wiggling its arm slightly. It almost looked like it was pulsing or something. I'm not sure. And I don't know if I actually saw this. Maybe fear just made me go crazy. But it looked like near David's stomach, where the wound was, that it was getting bigger, inflating almost. It was just very slight. And it looked as if he had just taken in a really big breath and held it, like he had a pot belly that he couldn't suck in anymore. And then I heard a horrible noise, like a kind of a splat sound. And there was a bigger tear in David, where his stomach had gotten bigger. There was something leaking out of him, something red, but it didn't look like blood. It looked different, thicker, more brown, like the trees I had seen. There were parts of David's insides just leaking out onto the ground. It was the most horrible thing I have ever seen in my life. The last sight I saw was this thing shoving its other arm really quickly into David, and then it scuttling backwards, back up that same tree, while pulling David along. It dragged him up the tree, and then into that massive opening. After that, I heard some muffled noises, but I could not quite make them out. I moved as slowly as I possibly could after that. I made sure to double check every single step so that I did not make any noise. It took me hours to get back to David's car. He still had the keys on his body. I could not even drive it home. I had to hike for miles until someone was kind enough to pick me up and drove me to the nearest town. I reported what happened to the sheriff in the town. I had to. I was the last person seen with him. People knew he was driving me up to New England. I was lucky I was not a prime suspect in a murder case. I changed my story. I told them everything that I told you, up to hearing him scream. I told them I saw a pack of wild dogs tear him apart and drag him off, that he had the only gun, that there was no way for me to help. The sheriff looked at me funny. I don't think he believed me whatsoever. He told me that there were no wild dogs in New England. He asked me if I meant I saw some eastern coyotes, and I jumped at that. I just nodded really quickly and was like, yeah, that's it. Which in retrospect, probably made me look even more guilty. It was a stupid thing. He then told me that it's odd, since they usually only hunt in pairs, even though they live in packs. I tried to make up some bullshit, how I didn't get a good look, so I did not know exactly how many there were, that I was just really scared. I think he really did believe me that I didn't kill him, that I was really scared. I think those two parts are what he did believe. He actually got quiet at one point and told me that I could tell him the truth, that he has seen weird things in the deep woods before and that he wouldn't ever call me crazy. But I stuck to my story. I thought maybe it was a trick of some kind. He eventually let me go. I don't know how much they looked into the case, but I was never arrested or questioned ever again. It took me a long time to get home. It was a combination of really rural shitty buses, hitchhiking, and even catching a ride on a train. People were looking at me funny when I came into work a few days later. They had all heard that David had gone missing. Everyone knew my story by now. People didn't talk to me quite as much. I think they all thought that I killed him, gotten rid of him. I did not stay in that job all that long. It still makes me cry just talking about the situation. I have never felt so scared or powerless like that in my entire life before. If you're talking about Lake Velika, located 5 to 7 kilometers northwest of the village of Central, then you can't miss the artificial hills that surround the entire lake. A narrow-gauge railway once ran along these hills. On the eastern side, the hills are tall, while on the western side, they are much lower. During World War II, a locomotive would pull trailers up the hill, then release them to roll down, simulating the movement of bombers. It was on these rolling trailers that cadets of bomber aviation practiced bombing moving targets, with training dummies, of course. The region around here has always had its share of bandits. On the map, you can still find names like Oliva Griva. Local legends say these places were named after a clearing where bandits used to hide their stolen goods. One of the more infamous figures in the area's history was Ataman Vorkon, an accomplice of Pugachev who managed to evade capture. He lived in Goliva Polyana. The land is also marked by traces of a glacier, numerous karst sinkholes and hills. These natural features gave the bandits ample hiding spots for their loot. According to the local lore, they would seal their stolen goods in oak barrels and sink them in the remote forest lakes formed by the karst. The forests in this area are full of strange remnants, abandoned villages like Kreste, which consists of just one house, deserted locations, and a sense of isolation that pervades the landscape. The distances between the settlements are vast, stretching 20 to 30 to maybe 50 kilometers even. I've encountered the tracks of bears here, though they're not very large, in the lower reaches of the Luk River. Wild, or more accurately, feral bison live. Their tracks and cakes are frequent. Their droppings are nearly 3 times the size of those left by cows. The Luk River is like a twin to the Kurzanets River, and it's not far from it. On the opposite side of the river, there is an active monastery, though I'm not sure if the monks there are hermits. If you head west from the lake, the road follows the path of the former narrow-gauge railway to Lake Sankar. The railway was built by prisoners and captured German soldiers. Close to the destroyed bridge over Luk River is the settlement of Pochayka, or what's left of it. If you don't know where to look, it's easy to miss, as it's now completely reclaimed by the forest. But if you pay attention, you can still find remnants of foundations, fire ponds, and other signs of human habitation. Among military acquaintances, these parts are known to be bad news. More than once, Chem AZ trucks have sunk in Pochayka, and cars often break down here. In the spring of 2005, my own team nearly drowned a Neva in what seemed like a harmless puddle. A spring stream had turned the area into quicksand, and the Neva started sinking almost immediately. We had a winch, but the cable was not long enough. While I was searching through the ruins of Pochayka for some extra wire, the Neva's muffler had sunk about 30 centimeters into the sand. On the other side of the Luk River, there's a German cemetery, but the most unsettling experience happened the Friday before last, when I drove through the area. Just 50 meters away from that puddle, I suddenly flipped my car over on level ground. I've driven this road dozens of times before, and I cannot explain where the pothole came from. I spent the night beside the car, trying to get things back in order. As I was making a fire in the barbecue, I put a thick log on top of it, and that's when things took a strange turn. The flames seemed to form a face, staring at me. It wasn't just an illusion, it really looked like a face. I moved the log, tossed in some fresh sticks, and everything seemed fine. But when I put the log back, the face returned. And this time, I even heard faint, glitchy voices in German. It sounded like whispers, soft and indistinct, with words like das and see. Nothing I could fully understand, but unsettling all the same. I found myself crossing myself in all directions, despite my atheistic worldview. The whole experience was unnerving, so much so that I decided to bury the log the very next day, but I never got the chance. A rescue team arrived for me the very next day in the early morning, and it felt too awkward to bury the log in front of them. They would think I was crazy, and I didn't really want to explain. The coincidences in the area, the breakdowns, the accidents, the strange occurrences, they seem too frequent to just be random, and I mean, not everyone can just be making up stories. Someone has to not be lying. I was 17 years old when this story happened to me. I'm having dinner with my parents and my little brother. He's 3 years old. My mom finishes and sits in the living room. I'm sitting in front of my brother and my dad between us at the top of the table. The dinner tabletop is made of glass. This time it doesn't have sheets on the top because they're being washed or something. My dad and I are talking while my little bro is eating his dinner slowly. In the middle of our conversation, my dad and I notice my brother's plastic cup of water just starts floating in the air, about 10 to 15 centimeters right up into the air. My dad and I stop talking and immediately look at the cup. It starts rotating clockwise in the air and begins moving to the side at the same altitude. We're in awe looking at this cup moving while my bro is heads down eating and my mom is watching the TV. After a few seconds that felt like minutes, the cup stops in the air and drops slowly on the dinner table. My dad looks at me and says, "Hey, your brother has telepathic powers, huh?" My mom asks what we are talking about, and we tell her, and she immediately grabs my brother and holds him because she is scared. My dad and I are not scared, but just amazed at what just happened, specifically because he and I knew that we saw it clearly happen. The only non-paranormal explanation that I could come up with was that maybe the water underneath the cup, due to condensation, and the glass top of the dinner table, made the illusion that it had moved. However, there was no water between the point where the cup lifted up into the air and the point where it was dropped back down. Something moved it right in front of us, possibly the same thing that messed with me before and after this event.